Good morning to the saints of God. This video is a continuation of our study of the book of Daniel, and it piggybacks off of our last video. Early reminder, this would not be an in-depth study because if we go in-depth, it may take pretty long, and I want everyone to be able to benefit from these videos. So without further ado, let's begin. So in our last video, we ended with this text, Daniel 11:36. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. We would have also discovered that the word "and the king" could be translated "and a king," which denotes a new power. So here we have this new power, this new kingdom, this new nation that exhibits certain traits. It exalts itself, it magnifies itself above every god, and it speaks marvelous things against the God of God. And as we continue from verses 37 to 39, we see that neither does he regard the gods of his father, nor the desire of woman, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most stronghold with the strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. So here we have some elements that exist in this kingdom. It is a new kingdom or nation. It exalts itself and magnifies itself above every god. It speaks marvelous things against God. It regards not the God of its fathers, nor does it regard the desire of woman, nor regard any god, but yet it honor the gods of forces. So who is this nation? A hasty conclusion will lead us to think that obviously this power is Rome. But let us see if Rome fits the criteria. If we were to look back at Daniel 11:31, 33, and 35, it highlights certain qualities of the papacy. In verses 31, we saw that there was a transition from the daily to the abomination that maketh desolate. We saw that also this power, the papal power, persecuted the saints by the sword, by flame, by captivities, and by spoils for many days. And also that there was an appointed time, and this time was the time of the end. So the introduction of a king cannot denote the Roman power. It is a new and separate power. And though the papacy does exalt himself above God and speak marvelous things against God, yet the papacy does not disregard its gods, its false gods. For all the gods that it inherited from its pagan state, they still hold fast to. So the papacy, under the guise of Christianity, still hold fast to its pagan beliefs and rites and gods. But this new nation, or this new king, seems to be an atheistic nation. So in our last video, we discovered that the sealed books of Daniel was revealed to John. Then therefore, if we are to discover who this king or kingdom is that arises or comes into view at the time of the end, then it would be wise to reference the book of Revelation. In the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verses 1 and 2, it reads, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon its horns 10 crowns, and upon its head the name Blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and its feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority." So here the book of Revelation borrows language from the book of Daniel. And as we look at the book of Daniel, we will understand who this beast is in the book of Revelation, chapter 13. The book of Daniel reads, "After this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a fourth beast, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 plucked up by the roots. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things." So this fourth beast, which gave rise to the little horn, can be none other than pagan Rome, and the little horn therefore must be papal Rome. With this knowledge, we can now deduce who is this king, nation, and or kingdom that enters the prophetic scene at the time of the end. So here we have in the book of Revelation the introduction of the little horn power, or the papacy. And in verse 3 of Revelation 13 introduces a power that gives the papacy a deadly wound. And this power is none other than atheistic France. It was in 1798, the time of the end, where Napoleon directed his General Berthier, to capture and imprison the Pope. This ended the papacy's stately power, thus the Bible records it as receiving a deadly wound. So here is represented by the king, the nation of France, atheistic France. And Daniel was also given visions of the moral condition of that nation back then. For further reference, you can reference the book Great Controversy, chapter 15, and the book Daniel and Revelation, chapter 11. And for the sake of brevity, I would be highlighting some points from both books so that we can understand what was the moral state in France at that time. The Great Controversy reads, "The 1260 year of papal supremacy began in AD 538 and would therefore terminate in 1798. At that time, a French army entered Rome and made the Pope a prisoner, and he died in exile. Though a new Pope was soon afterward elected, the papal hierarchy has never since been able to wield the power which it before possessed." From Daniel and Revelation from Uriah Smith, it reads, "The fear of God is so far from being the beginning of wisdom that it is the beginning of folly. Modesty is only the invention of refined voluptuousness. The Supreme King, the God of the Jews and the Christians, is but a phantom. Jesus Christ is an impostor." This was one of many statements that were made in the time of the French Revolution, where men disregarded God. Again, Uriah Smith states, "France is the only nation in the world concerning which the authentic record survives, that as a nation she lifted her hands in open rebellions against the author of the universe. France stands apart as a single state which, by the decree of a legislative assembly, pronounced that there was no God." Again, we read of France. The Hebrew word for woman is also translated wife, and Bishop Newton observed that this passage would be more properly rendered the desire of wife. This would seem to indicate that this government, at the same time it declared that God did not exist, would trample underfoot the law which God had given to regulate the marriage institution. The book Great Controversy reads, "France presented also the characteristics which especially distinguished Sodom. During the revolution, there was manifest a state of moral debasement and corruption similar to that which brought destruction upon the cities of the plain, and the historian presents together the atheism and the licentiousness of France as given in the prophecy. Intimately connected with these laws affecting religion was that which reduced the union of marriage." The book Daniel and Revelation also states concerning France, "How can a nation disregard every god and yet honor the God of forces? It might for a time disregard all gods, and then subsequently introduce another worship and regard the God of forces. Did such a change occur in France at this time? It did. The attempt to make France a godless nation produced such anarchy that the rulers feared the power would pass entirely out of their hands, and therefore perceived that as a political necessity, some kind of worship must be introduced. So here we have it, folks. France fits the prophetic bill. It regarded no God. It regarded not the gods of their fathers, nor the desire of woman. And because the nation removed God, it fell into anarchy, and a form of worship was introduced as a means of curtailing the social unrest. Now, you may ask yourself, how is that relevant today? How is this history lesson relevant for us today? And here's my answer. In the next installment, in the next video, all of this will come together and make sense, and we will see that it has critical relevance for us today. So I want to thank you for staying tuned to this drawn out history lesson, and in our next installment, brethren, it is going to be mind-boggling. It's going to be amazing. So I really bid you to stay tuned, because all that we would have learned comes together in the next video. So God bless. Stay faithful.